Good afternoon, all. Good afternoon to those early people. I can see lots and lots of names appearing in our participant list for this afternoon, which is fantastic. So we're just coming up to start time. Before we get going formally, Francis and I are going to be your hosts for this afternoon. We'll let the room fill up. Whilst you are waiting, there's a few things on the screen that you can do just to get yourself ready and get comfortable. First of all, relax. You're off camera and muted. We can't see you. The spotlight is on myself and Francis this afternoon. If you can create a little space for good attention over the next 45 minutes, that's fantastic. So maybe think about putting things on do not disturb or shutting down other applications or windows. You don't want those emails pinging up in the corner over the next 45 minutes. And Nicola's already started us off in the chat, which is fantastic. One of the primary ways that we'll be able to interact in the chat this afternoon is there. And just while we're waiting for the room to fill up, drop us a thought in the chat about you and procrastination. How's that going? Are you mates? Is that a tricky relationship? Is it somewhere where you're looking for emergency assistance? Are you a recent procrastinator, or have you been doing it for a lifetime? What gave you the idea to give us a part of your afternoon here this afternoon with Think Productive? And always fun here to see how people ended up here. Some people may be the fan of Graham Alcott's book, How to Be a Productivity Ninja. Some people might have been on previous Ninja Skills sessions, these free sessions. Some people who might have come into your workplace either physically or virtually in order to do some work from the Think Productive training portfolio. Some of you I may have even met in person at workshops in the past as well. So we're just going to give everyone 30 more seconds before we get going formally. And it'd be great to hear from you. Vicky says, huge issues, please help. Double exclamation mark, which looks good. Jane says, I'm amazing at procrastinating. I've got it totally sorted. It's my special skill. And I
Love
like
this
the
next
joke
one.
there, Janet. Yeah. I was thinking about not joining and waiting for a recording to become available. There will be a recording. I'll just say that as well before we dive in. You're obviously all off camera and off mic for this, and the recording isn't going to capture what you're sharing in the chat. And if Francis and I voice anything that's in the chat, just to bring it into the discussion, we'll only ever refer to people by first names. So it's all good to share there. It won't be on record in any kind of formal YouTubey way. And you can also use, if you want to ask something anonymously, you can also use the Q&A panel as well as the chat panel as well. And that gives you another way of asking things and bring things to discussion. Lindsay there, it's a lifetime of procrastination. I think it's linked to perfectionism. I think it might be too as well. Kate says, I have a mixed relationship with procrastination. I can be hugely productive and belt through a list, but other things I just keep putting it off. Yes, I think I'm with you, Kate. I think I'm that person too. So let's not put it off any further. Let's get going officially. We got close to 100 people have arrived for this afternoon's session.
Oh.
Tongue-in-cheek title, How to Stop Procrastinating ... tomorrow. Brought to you by your friends at Think Productive. So if this is the first time that you've encountered Think Productive, first of all, welcome. We are a UK founded training and coaching company that's over the last 13, 14 years spread across the world. So we have teams across Europe, in the Middle East, Australia, New Zealand, and North America too. And we help people through training, coaching, consultancy with two things. We help people with getting stuff done, the productivity, the ticking off of the tasks, but we're also equally interested in the well-being, the work-life balance, the self-care, the looking after ourselves and each other. So I am one of Think Productive's trainers. We have the very strange job title, Productivity Ninja. If we were together in person, I could actually prove it to you by showing it on my business card. And I work with our clients delivering and running workshops. And Francis keeps the whole engine of the company running, don't you, Francis? Tell us what your role is at TP.
Well, kind of, I do. I am client services manager at Think Productive, and I do all of the behind the scenes action of setting up your workshops, sending you the wonderful materials that go with it, and even what happens afterwards.
Yeah. Francis just makes us trainers look amazing. So It's a public opportunity on record for me to say, Francis, thank you for everything you do. Francis and I
Uh,
also made a pact that we would start us off today by each sharing our most secret procrastination guilt story, just to open up the space so hopefully everybody else feels that they might be in that kind of mode as well. So my one is that I once procrastinated for a very, very long time, and I will reveal the time in a minute, about whether or not we should get a dishwasher in the house. That
oh,
problem is nearly solved. I will say a little bit more about that later. But the procrastination duration was 15 years, 5 years. So, Francis,
wow.
I don't know whether you can beat that or not.
15 years to get a dishwasher. Well, I had to break it to you, but I think I can beat that.
Oh no.
So, I've just turned 40. Well, I'm halfway through it already. And believe it or not, I have put off getting a driver's license for the last 20 years.
Wow. So for 20
And I did a
years, 15 years.
Yeah, I did a bit of fact checking. But the very first student license that I had, just so that I could start learning, I got it exactly 20 years ago. Not to
Wow.
the date, but the year it was 20 years ago.
So the rest of you, what I would love you to start thinking about to help our discussion as we're going along. Think about your current procrastination things, things you're procrastinating about right now, things you have done in the past, maybe what the longest one was, and maybe prepare yourself for a little bit of a discussion around why as well, because that's going to really help us out in the little places that we're going to visit over the next few minutes. So what is it? I mean, we all know what it is. It's not doing stuff until it's too late or nearly too late. Yeah. So that's a very clear statement of the problem. You'd think we would have fixed it by now. Um, Clearly, we have not. I did a bit of Google Trends searching last week, and even just for the most common search phrase you could think of, how to stop procrastinating, that exact phrase is searched for 22,000 times a month on UK Google alone. And if you just search in Google for the word procrastination, as of this morning, because I checked again, there were 72 million natural search
Wow.
results. So clearly, this is something that people are working on as well. People have already started to share their stories in the chat. Francis, what's
Hmm.
coming in?
Yep. There's lots of people who are also putting off their driver's license a
Yeah.
couple of years. K has actually beat me to it, 21 years.
And Zanel says at uni, I'd rather pair up my socks than work on my essay. I think that was also me, Zanel, as well. So difficult stuff. Let's press into the definition a little bit more. Though we've all got this natural definition of just not doing stuff, but there's something deeper in there that I think will give us a lift off point for today. So these are two slightly more academic definitions of procrastination that I pulled from the research, and I think they give us some important pointers here. So first of all, the illogical delay of behavior. Like when we do it, it doesn't make sense to do it. Like we know it's not the right choice, but we still do it. And then the first one I really think brings in an extra element, which is delay. We knew that bit, but in conjunction with subjective discomfort. So it feels awful as well. So we got two things, well, three things. It's the not doing the stuff. It doesn't make any sense to put it off. And then it feels disgusting as a result. And we feel bad about ourselves. Things isn't getting done. And there's all really interesting emotional tangle around it as well. So given that, like, why do we make these choices? Um, a lot of it is a combination of conscious and subconscious thinking, right? So often many of us might be able to explain, if challenged, some kind of conscious story around why we were procrastinating about a particular task. but a lot of it may be unspoken, unvoiced, or unknown even to ourselves. So those of you who've been on some of our other workshops or attended some of these other free sessions or watched them back on YouTube, you might remember when we've talked about the lizard brain, the kind of primitive, basic part of our brain that if we look at an anatomy diagram, it's kind of back here, and it's in charge of the sort of instinctive behaviors, the fight, the flight, the freeze, the self-protection. It brings back all those things that, you know, when we were animals, used to be what ruled our day and ruled our choices as well. And the lizard brain can be really involved in our choice, unconscious choice to procrastinate about things. I like Gabriel's point there about it's related to confidence. Like, it's going to be hard, it's going to be tricky. I might not know how to do it. I might not get it right. You know, that might be front of mind, but that also might be back of mind as an unsurfaced reason as well. Susanna there, I procrastinate things I enjoy doing and am good at. That makes even less sense. Yeah, why do our brains do weird stuff like that? So I'm hoping that what we can do over the next few minutes is start to explore both the conscious and the unconscious reasons why stuff gets procrastinated over. And then start to actually press into some really practical things to kind of make that change as well. So keep your examples and observations coming in the chat. It's really, really good stuff. What we need to do is start, and using a Star Wars reference is always risky because not everybody always gets it, but we need to start finding ways to play those Jedi mind tricks with ourselves, which is kind of move it from where we are in terms of our current attitude to that particular task or that particular kind of work or that particular duty, and move us into a place where instead of this feeling of inertia and resistance or fear, we can start to move it into a sense of confidence, a sense of progress, and a sense that, like, I can at least get started as well. What's been coming in the chat, Francis? Well, I've just been opening us all up to that experience.
In the chat, it all seems to be the same theme, which is fear. It's either a fear of making a mistake, a fear of making a decision. Gabriel put it as just seeing that I'm not the only one having an issue with this. So it is something that's universal. I deal with this personally.
Mm.
I've done that for that one thing for 20 years, and I'm sure that I've done it for a lot of other things. Janet also says unpleasant tasks, things that they don't want to do or dread in some way. That's
Mm.
also a great factor in procrastinating, which is
Well, I
true.
think those Google search results prove that we're not alone. The fact that there's
Yes.
113 of us on the session this afternoon prove that we're not alone. And all you people watching back on the YouTube recording, it's you too as well. And just like Francis says, it's me as well. You know, I happen to have this strange job where I work for a productivity training company and I talk to people all day about getting stuff done. But don't think I don't do this one as well. When we were looking for volunteers late last year for this year's schedule of taster workshops, I put my hand up for this one because this has been a lifetime issue for me and continues to be. And that's hopefully why I might be able to share a few things into our discussion as well. But yeah, a couple of people, Janet, you've got it on it, Oksana as well. Let's just burrow in a little bit more into why we might resist. So I'd like you to have in mind the thing that you conjured up as your example, current or past procrastination challenge. And let's do a bit of diagnosis. So this is the DUST model. This is from my colleague Graham's How to Be a Study Ninja book. Um, kind of aimed at kind of sixth formers, university students, people doing professional development and stuff. But there's some great things in there for all of us. He says if you don't know why you're procrastinating on something, throw a bit of dust at it. So query, is it because it's too difficult? We've had a few people mention that. Is it just too vague and undefined? Is it not even clear, like what you need to do, or perhaps more importantly, where you need to start? Is it too scary? Will it just be darned unpleasant to do it, or awkward, or icky, or whatever? Or would it be tedious? Is it just, I know I'm supposed to do it, it's really, really boring? So what I'd love to do, just I'm going to give you a few seconds to put your own thoughts on which of the dusts might apply to the thing that you have in mind as you procrastinate. And I'm going to explain why it took me 15 years to get a dishwasher using this model. So first of all, it wasn't tedious. It sounded fun. I really wanted to have a dishwasher. And it wasn't undefined because it was going to be really clear when I'd had a dishwasher installed. I knew what the end point was and I knew what had to happen to get there. But it was difficult and scary. First of all, we only had one space under the counters in the kitchen, which was currently occupied by the washing machine. So I had to work out somewhere else in the house the washing machine could go. And that was a whole tangle. And then, secondly, I have this really weird fear about plumbing leaks in the house. And I literally have nightmares about water coming out of pipes and ruining the flooring and stuff. And it's basically
Oh,
I needed to find a plumber I would really, really trust in order to do the
mm,
work. And when I was able to do that, we've had some progress. The dishwasher is ordered, it exists, it's sitting in its box in the lounge, and the plumber is coming a week on Friday to fit it. And I'm incredibly excited. Has anyone put anything in the chat, Francis, about applying the dust model to their particular procrastination one?
yes, Julie says it's mainly with things that they're not sure about. So there's a lack of confidence. There's perception that things are difficult. Craig even wonders if they're just lazy rather than just serially procrastinating.
Mm,
Annie Rose is saying,
Craig, I don't know you. I'm
um,
not willing to make a ruling on that. I suspect it's many of the other things that we are all experiencing as well. So there you go. Um, Janet, my husband puts off pairing socks because it is tedious and he claims difficult. Okay, so that gives us a clue then how to
mhm,
apply the dust model. Jackson has created a slogan now using it. Just do it.
just
Yeah.
do it.
So
Very
use the
catchy.
dust model to diagnose. You might have one or two, or it might be just one, or it might be all of them in play. And what you need to do is think about stuff that you can reduce the difficulty level of the ones that are in play. So the difficult thing, I had to go and get advice about where it was practical to put my washing machine in the house instead. And the scary bit, I had to reduce by finding a plumber I could trust. And I did that by going and talking to neighbors and asking who those used as well. So
Mhm.
that's one thing that hopefully you can find useful the next time you identify something that you're procrastinating on. I want to talk about a few other concepts. Now, these are some classics from our other sessions, but what I want to do is talk about them particularly in application to our agenda of the day, which is the procrastination tangle. Many of you might have seen this slide in some of our workshops. This is our trademarked kind of way to try and convey what it looks like in many of our heads. And notice our friend there has got small, large, trivial, profound, big, small, work things, not work things on there. Um, Sometimes getting going is just, it's difficult to remember A, what on earth are we supposed to be doing? Like in all that tangle. And B, the kind of the dusty ones, they're going to fall by the wayside. They're not going to be front of mind. Our unconscious mind is going to push them away or maybe peel a little note off and drop it over there so we don't see it. There's a very famous quote in the productivity space by David Allen, the author of Getting Things Done. And he said, the problem here is that your mind is for having ideas, not for holding them. So if that internal tangle, that confusion of choices is ever part of whether or not you feel you procrastinate, we recommend you get yourself a second brain. So this is something we teach in more depth on one of our full day courses, How to Be a Productivity Ninja. But if you go back on the YouTube channel and look at some of the previous series of Ninja Skills Tasters, you can get some of this good stuff too, or you can get hold of the How to Be a Productivity Ninja book. A second brain is just a metaphor for your tasks list, your to-do app, your project manager or whatever. If you can get some kind of container outside of your brain that can be better at the job of just the raw remembering, you get the worker mode brain back for the actual doing as well, like that as well. What's been coming in the chat, Francis, while I've been talking? I think some people had quite a strong moment of recognition to the previous slide. I'll put it back here.
Yes, lots of people relating to this picture. Gabriel also says that he relates to this so much. It summarizes perfectly his brain or their brain when they have something that they're not confident in. Pam tends to like to be able to finish a job. So if
Mm,
they have some time that might not be enough to complete the task, they'll put it off. Lots of people are putting scared or difficult. And it's not just difficult in terms of how it's being done, it's also the emotional difficulty. Like if
Yeah.
they find it emotionally difficult to do something, then that might be the cause of procrastination for them.
Definitely. This is the connection back to the lizard brain. Our brain is going to pick the one that is closest to the front of our mind because we haven't buried it. And it's going to want to pick an easy one, and it's going to pick a nice one, and it's going to pick a fun one. And then the flip side of that
Hmm.
is our brain isn't going to pick the things that actually we probably should be doing. So getting a second brain assist spun up little bit beyond the scope of today's workshop, but it's something that's a little bit more structured, a little bit more superpowered, a little bit more assistive than your existing relationship with your to-do lists. Esther saying my actual notebook and diary actually looks like that picture of the colleague with the post-it notes all over their face. And it will be able to do new things on top of what your existing to-do practices will do. So it's going to do a lot more of the managing of projects, looking at the big picture thinking, but at the same time keeping a track of all those small little micro actions that you actually probably are the ones that don't eventually become the cherries to put on the cakes that are part of your procrastination experience. So getting a second brain might help and might set things up in the right direction. The second thing I want to share in terms of an assist is just a really sort of frank um, attention to your attention. So we don't often call ourselves in TP world a time management training company. In fact, we try to dispose of that piece of language quite early on in any relationship with clients or delegates. But we do talk an awful lot about attention management. The modern, particularly the hybrid workplace, this kind of interruption heavy distractions, email pings, Teams alerts going off. Um, it's really easy for our focus and our flow and our concentration to be broken. So even when we finally got started on one of these procrastination things, our brain is desperately looking for any reason to stop or be diverted or an excuse to lay it down and come back to it later, which of course you won't do. So in the book, Graham talks about just the knowledge that we tend to have like three modes of attention. The proactive attention is the one that we have the least of in any particular working day or cycle. It's that can be maybe a couple of hours where we kind of got the most energy, we're most on fire, we're kind of most in the flow. And proportionately, we get a huge amount done in those couple of hours compared to maybe the rest of the day. At the other end of the continuum, possibly at the other end of the day, we've got what's called inactive attention. We're starting to run out of fuel. We're maybe a little bit more vulnerable to interruption and distraction. We might be slowing down. We might feel that we're maybe starting to make mistakes. And then there's maybe the middle portion of the day, that kind of middle traffic light of the attention kind of status, which is kind of, I can still get stuff done, but, I'm not on fire. Now, the interesting thing about procrastination is you might find that what you want to do is really drop your procrastinated tasks into your proactive attention part of the day when you're like really, really good. Or other people actually find that it's really great to do your procrastination tasks during the inactive part of your day. You started to slow down, you're looking for something to fill before you can kind of knock off. I've known people do it at the other end of the day as well. So just thinking about the texture and the pattern of your day when it comes to your attention kind of supply and where it might be best to try and drop in some of those procrastination tasks. Francis, update us on the chat. What's come in either about that
Yes.
thought or about other stuff?
On the chat, we have Charlotte sharing their experience with a second brain. They're actually a project manager and used their project plan and other tools to try and rationalize an emotional personal decision.
Mm,
And it really helped to focus their fearful mind on what's actually needed to do next.
yeah.
Um, and then we have Janet, who instead of having a to-do list, actually has a completed list,
Ah,
which
Janet, you're
we
gonna
call
like
something
you.
else in TP.
Yes, you're gonna like in a few slides when I get to the idea of a to-do list, which can be a really good anti-procrastination hack as well. I like that one, Charlotte. Yeah, you've really kind of reinforced what I was talking about how having a really good second brain system, having a really good container for holding all those actions, and then looking at those at a project level, and actually kind of being able to step back from the raw remembering and actually make those good boss mode thinking decisions about what is this thing like? Does it matter? Why does it matter? How does it link to all the other stuff? Is it creating a bottleneck? Why am I just leaving it for so many repeats? That can be a really, really good way of kind of breaking that inertia. I want to share two classics with you, and they are absolute classics, but I do not feel guilty about sharing with them because they're classics for a reason, because they work. So if you've used either of these, I would love to hear in the chat your own experiences of using them. Just in case anybody's not familiar with them, I am going to explain what they are, but I actually want to spend a little bit more time thinking about why they work rather than just what the technique is, which that is maybe a discussion you've not heard before. So the first one is the Pomodoro technique. It's been around since the 1980s, invented by Francesco Cirillo, who actually, it was a technique he used when studying at university. So you often also see it in study habits books and things like that, as well as in the kind of workplace productivity training that we do as well. So Francesco was there procrastinating about doing some college work. A couple of people have shared in the chat as that. And he reached once for the clockwork tomato timer that was in the kitchen at home. Pomodoro is Italian for tomato, hence the name of the Pomodoro technique. And he just started setting the timer. He set it for 25 minutes and it was like, go. So the rules of the Pomodoro technique are as follows. One Pomodoro dash is 25 minutes. You pick the task, the one thing you've been avoiding doing. You set and start the timer and you just go for it for 25 minutes. No stopping allowed, no checking your email, no getting up to go and make a cup of tea. And at the end of 25 minutes of that sprint, you are allowed to stop and you have a 5-minute break to do whatever you need to do. And then you do 4 of those in a row. And then in the official version of the technique, you then get to have a 20-minute break. So you could see how like half a morning could be very rapidly built up with a block of 4 Pomodoro dashes as well. But Susanna, who's already a fan, has started to reveal why this works. So there's something really interesting around the ritual of the timer. And you could work in different length dashes. You don't have to group them up in blocks of 4. You could just do one 20-minute dash or something else like that. Here's the explanation of why it works. There is something ritual about marking the moment where you set the timer and you begin it. You have you've done liftoff. There's also something then, there is a physical totem or touchstone visible in front of you to say, I am in this mode. I must not stop, no matter how much I hate it. I must not be distracted by the Teams pings or the emails. But I know I can stop in 25 minutes. So that kind of takes the difficulty edge off it as well. And the fact that you're then breaking things down into 25-minute chunks makes it feel a little bit easier. So the overall big thing might feel hugely overwhelming, but you're changing the bargain with yourself and you're saying, oh, all I'm going to do is do this little bit and then I can have a break. And I've known people do things like writing papers. They've broken it down to 1 Pomodoro each morning and afternoon for a week. And it kind of feels a lot less overwhelming there before. Esther said, I've heard the name of this before and one of my previous colleagues described it to me. I was trying to unpack boxes around having moved house. Yeah, speed cleaning at home. I've heard people do a Pomodoro on that and stuff like that as well. The other reason it seems to work is there's something about turning the attention of time upside down, right? So when we're working on something, we normally think about how long you've been working on it since you began. With the Pomodoro technique or the other timer sprints, the countdown is going down rather than up. And there's something interesting that happens in your head when you know that you've dedicated that slot. It's sometimes also called time boxing in other famous productivity techniques. But there's something about going down that allows you that sort of additional, it sort of favors the idea of staying in the mode and staying on task as well. Needs to be really, really combined with setting up something we'll talk about in a minute with Ninja Stealth and Camouflage. Physical timers seem to work really well, but digital timers are available on the phones and stuff like that. And I used to like one where whenever I did a successful Pomodoro, it gave me a little star. And I could build up like my teenager's sticker chart. I could build up in a certain number of stars a day or stars a week or something like that. So Pomodoro technique or some version of working in attention dashes. absolute classic for a reason. And I hope that was a little bit more of an explanation than you may have heard before about why it's worth a go. Francis, are people fans in the chat? Has there been a good reaction to that classic? Yeah.
Yes, lots of fans of the Pomodoro technique and lots of variations too.
Yeah.
Either moving house, clearing some boxes,
Mhm.
doing the dishwashing.
Yes.
Um,
Speed
people
dishwashing. 20 minutes,
speed
go.
dishwash
I won't need that
20 minutes.
anymore because the dishwasher's coming a week on Friday. It's going to change my life.
Oh,
um,
strike
so
that
that
off the list. Okay.
Jackson says, sometimes I find it helps to do something your procrastination in combination with something that isn't interesting. For example, if I need to empty the bins at home and I'm cooking, if the beans need 2.5 minutes, I will try and empty all the bins. Oh, right. So yeah, that race, that time pressure, the kind of, yeah, making it a game, making it a challenge. That's a really interesting twist on that particular technique. Second classic, and then we got some more good stuff as well for you after these. Eat the frog. A lot of you might have heard this, but you might not necessarily know the derivation, and you might not necessarily have paused to think about why. So, eat the frog, people have often heard from it by two different routes. They've often heard from it by the very famous book in the 90s, Brian Tracy, Eat That Frog, 21 Ways to Stop Procrastinating. It is a really good book, still valid, even in the modern kind of hybrid working, everything is digital kind of workplace area. But actually, even Brian Tracy was bringing it from an original Mark Twain quote. And the Mark Twain quote is often misreported, and people often miss out the second half, which I think is really, really important. So, first of all, Eat the Frog is about the idea of just do the worst thing first and just do it. It will be awful. The frog represents the thing that you have most procrastinated about, the thing that you have most left for the longest, the thing that is most overdue, the thing that you're most hoping everybody else in your life has forgotten that you were apparently supposed to be doing, and you're terrified that they're going to ask you for an update. Okay, that is the frog. And Twain's quote said, if it's your job to eat a frog, it's best that you do it first thing in the morning. That was part one. So that's that whole thing of just get it over with. You just got to do it. It'll be disgusting, but after that, you've got that feeling of the release of the inertia, a little small victory. You feel better about yourself, and actually, you find that it probably wasn't as bad once you finally got to do it as you had convinced yourself it was going to be. But the second part of the Twain quote that's often not shared is he then went on to say, and if you have to eat two frogs, it's best to start with the biggest one first. And I think that just reinforces the idea that if you have a little bit of a plague of frogs breaking out on your to do list, first of all, even the idea of identifying them as a frog, perhaps labeling them, putting, if you're using one of the task managers, putting a little label on it, hash frog or at frog, or highlighting them in green, highlighter pen or something like that. First of all, giving them a name kind of allows you to spot them and explore them. But just go for the worst first, and also the worst of the worst first. And if you need to start slaying those frogs by throwing some tomatoes at them, you can kind of see how we're starting to combine those particular tasks as well. Gabrielle says, I've had a lake full of frogs at the moment. Yes, I remember a time a few years ago where I'd started to see things like that mount up on my own to-do list. And I went on a 1 month long frog hunt. So I labeled them all of that nature in my to-do list, my little app. I put a little hashtag on all of the frogs. And then the rule for every day for that month was I had to kill one frog each morning. It's not a particularly animal friendly metaphor, I appreciate. And we once did this workshop for the World Wildlife Fund. So you can imagine how difficult it was to share this tip with them. But they did get it. It is just a metaphor. No animals were harmed in the interests of anti-procrastination as well. And Zanel, yes, rewards and self-denial is a thing we're going to come on to in a minute. But yes, I have known people do eat the frog and then reward themselves with an actual Freddo chocolate frog at the end as well. Other micro rewards of your choice are also available. And a bit of seasoning. Yeah, maybe a bit of that dust seasoning in order to make it go down as well. Yeah, Ruth, just one little part of it a day can be a really, really good way of starting the day. And I just want to extend that a little bit more to this idea of structuring the day. a lot of the things around procrastination are around resistance and inertia, attention patterns, distraction, interruption. Raw willpower is weak. Our brains are going to look for any reason not to do these things. So creating a structure and an environment where we can actually increase the chance of success of like initiation. Well, first of all, selection, picking the right one, then initiation, and then making some progress, ideally to completion, even if it's across a number of sprints, can be really good. So again, those of you who've been on some of our other workshops, like the How to Be a Productivity Ninja or the Way of the Productivity Ninja, the idea of thinking about, where is the best place in my day to tackle some of these procrastinated tasks? Where's the best attention environment, either physically or digitally or something else like that? And how can I create a little rhythm or a texture to my day to make sure that, as well as doing the fun stuff and the stuff I enjoy, that I actually start to apportion some of my capacity and attention to some of that stuff as well. I think Susanna has had some good stuff there in the chat. What
Mhm.
have they shared there, Francis?
Susanna says they think that knowing others are also eating their frogs is a big motivator, which reminds me of something that we also do at Think Productive headquarters. Uh, Mornings when we have our huddles, we share our frogs, and that just gives you an idea of what everybody else is dealing with, what they don't want to procrastinate on. So that kind of
Mm,
gives you an idea of, okay, I need to find a frog. So we tend to do that
yeah,
during our meetings. Janet also says that a book called How to Manage Your Email Before It Manages You has helped them. It
yeah.
distracted them to no end to get through the day. Twice a day, check and respond to all emails, and if it's urgent, they got to know to ring my mobile. My team got used to that as
Yeah.
well.
Everyone's not going to believe. They're going to think that that Jeanette contribution was pre-planned, because like that is literally what my very next slide is about. Which is, we've identified our frogs, we've named them, we've used dust to kind of do a bit of diagnosis and exploration about why this particular thing or this particular set of things has become a procrastinated task. It might be overdue, we're already leaving it too late, and then the fear is going up. The more you leave it, the more scary it gets as well. um Once you actually do carve out a little slot, someone is going to try and sabotage you out there in the world. So we would encourage you, when you are then doing those dashes or those kind of commitments to yourself, to go what we call full stealth mode. So again, if you've been onto Way of the Productivity Ninja, the idea of stealth and camouflage as one of the 9 characteristics of Productivity Ninja. Gavin, I will address your point in the chat in a minute about work offline mode. It's really important to create that sort of physical and digital stealth. So tuning down some of those interruptions and distractions and notifications, maybe putting your status on some of the comms apps like Teams to do not disturb, even if it's only for that 25-minute Pomodoro. Maybe even announcing to people on the group chat, I'm going in, I'm doing 3 frogs in the next hour. See you on the other side. P.S. Please leave me alone. That kind of stuff could really, really kind of increase your chances of success. And there are apps on your phone where you can change the kind of availability, kind of texture, which things will come through. And Gavin, you've noticed up there in the top, we'd little highlighted the work offline mode in Outlook as well. I'm terrified if they've taken it away. I will have to explore that in a new Outlook update. But yeah, work offline mode is a really good thing in Hack, because maybe the thing you've been procrastinating about is replying to some difficult or sensitive emails. If you're in work offline mode in Outlook, you can compose and even send those replies through the outbox, but you won't have to experience the bombardment of new inbounds in as well. Gavin, drop me a line after the session. You and I will explore. Have they really taken it away, or have they just put it somewhere else? I suspect it's there somewhere if we do it as well. Yeah, this is the problem, Robbie. A lot of the new fancy stuff assumes you're going to be connected all of the time. So my response to that would be, just write the replies offline or do the task offline. Just turn off the Wi-Fi for half an hour, get something done, even if you have to compose it in an offline text file. Then you can send it back out into the world the next time when you come in the dash. Yeah, schedule send can be really good for that
Mhm.
kind of stuff as well. I've got a few more things to share, and then hopefully there will be time for some Q&A. We've talked about having the second brain, really that sort of good container for the managing of the project level thinking and also of holding the actions and stuff like that. At the other end of that, our full day workshop, we talk about the habit of the weekly review. And it's kind of a deep sort of hour or two each week where you cease worker mode doing and you go into deep boss mode thinking. Again, there's been one of these free ninja skills tasters up on the YouTube. It will take you through the whole weekly review habit. But the way I wanted to connect that to our topic of the day is the fact that if you're doing a weekly review where you're actually going in and saying what did get done last week, where are we up to, what didn't get done last week, and why, you maybe start to spot these habits. You start to spot what slides itself into the procrastination pile, and you might be able to identify those patterns a little bit more reliably and a little bit more early as well. Jen says, yes, I'm going to give it a try, work offline mode. People never seem to understand my do not disturb status. Oh gosh, yes. A discussion for another day about how to treat each other respectfully in the digital space as well. Let's come to the motivation bit. Francis, this was where you talked about announcing in Daily Huddle about, I've got this frog and I'm going to do that one today. A lot of the reasoning behind why stuff gets procrastinated is to do with that seesaw of, at the moment, it feels better to not do it. And then eventually the seesaw tips and you get to the point where, okay, it's due tomorrow. I really have to do it now. Yeah. So there's this delayed gratification thing where our brains will want to say no until the reasons to say yes outweigh the benefit of temporarily saying no. So a lot of that tipping of the seesaw can be done around playing with the kind of internal intrinsic motivation to do this thing that we've talked about so far. But sometimes just telling another person so they can check up on you is really, really the best thing to do. So like daily work huddles, procrastination buddies. If you've got someone else in your team that you know lives this life as well, you can say, hey, why don't you and I have an appointment every Thursday morning where we both turn up for an hour physically or virtually with our procrastinated list and we just hit it for an hour. Or just messaging your colleague who's, you know, your work buddy saying, please ask me at 4 o'clock whether I've done this thing. You know, often the fact that someone else knows and someone else has been asked to check up on you or call you to account can be the thing that will tip the seesaw in that other direction. We've got a few more minutes. I'm just going to share a few things and then we'll wrap up for our advertised finish. But Francis and I are normally willing to hang around for a few after show things. So if people do want to stick around after the official finishing time, then we're good to do. This one came up as the to-do list, one of the contributions in the chat. There is a danger that this discussion around procrastination can just mean that you're constantly focused on the stuff you haven't done yet. You failure. Yeah, that is not a healthy internal dialogue either for ourselves and others. So what I do want you to hold on to as you take some of these ideas into your work in the coming days and weeks is it's really, really important, even in a busy workflow when the sort of the time horizon could collapse down and we're just thinking about getting to the end of the day or the end of this week. We don't often have that mindfulness moment where we can step up and look around and say, do you know what? Here's how far we've come, and here's what we have done. And let's pause to celebrate and notice that and share that and feel good about that. And then we can move on to what's next and what we need to pick and move on with. So reframing this idea of procrastination, that it's a flaw, that it's something that it's only me. It's not, it's all of us. It's me, it's Francis, it's every single person you ever meet. And just thinking about why it happens, but what are the things that we can do that might help, even if it doesn't permanently and forever fix it and change it. A lot of the productivity ninja work that we do with organizations is around just giving people the space to think about the way in which they tackle their work and how it gets done, and to look for ways that we can change it and nudge it in a different direction. So we're nearly at wrap up time for today. Please keep your thoughts coming in the chat, particularly if you want to fire questions at me and Francis in the after show. Now is your time to get them going in the chat or in the Q&A. But in return for joining us today, we wanted to give you something nice. So we're going to give you information about our new program that is coming up. So as well as doing short productivity workshops, 2 hour, half day, full days, last year we also moved ourselves into the management development space as well. So head to the Think Productive website. You can see the new public cohort of our influential leader program that's starting the month after next. And as a special thing, just for those of you who joined us today, if you drop us a line to hello@thinkproductive.co.uk with the cheat code procrastinate in the subject line, you get a chance to win a half price ticket to the development program. And it's quite a chunky piece of training. It's a 3-month program, something happening every week for 12 weeks. So you'd like a chance to win that. We all like a good competition. So I'll either bring this QR code back up on the screen afterwards, or you can just drop a line to hello@thinkproductive.co.uk with the procrastinate in the subject line. And you'll have a chance to win. So we're at official time. Thank you so much for your contributions in the chat. How to get in touch with either myself or Francis is there. Find us both on LinkedIn. Thank you so much for coming, particularly those of you who left booking until right at the last minute. I saw you in the final hour as I was watching the numbers of registered tip up, as at least 40 of you booked in the final hour. If you have another meeting that you have to go to, either physically or virtually, we'll wrap it up there officially. But Francis and I are happy to hang around for up to 10 minutes. If others do, we can kind of go a little bit more freeform, relaxed, take more questions. We even have the opportunity for some of you to come in on voice as well, if we want to use that version of the technology. So thank you very much. And if Klein chooses to trim the video recording here on the YouTubes, I'll say goodbye to the YouTubes as well. Find us on thinkproductive.co.uk if you have any more questions. Thanks, Jack, and thanks for noticing. It's deliberate. Cool. So there are some people still hanging around. Did we get anything in the Q&A panel, Francis, that came up? I didn't see anything spot up.
Same here. Nothing on
Yeah.
the Q&A panel, but lots of thanks going through right now, and really lots of people just sharing their tips and tricks. Tracy has even shared a way for us to find that work offline mode. So
Oh,
maybe that was just hidden in the
yeah.
last update. So
Updates always terrify me. They change stuff, and it's like it's the stuff that you really, really was part of your trusted kit bag of tools, and then it's like it's
mhm.
in a different place or you do it in a different way. I've actually had automatically added to my Windows toolbar yesterday. I can see a new little funky icon saying Copilot Preview. So
Ooh.
AI has decided to mash itself onto my setup without me even asking. I hasten to add. Um, but I did use Copilot to get that. How often do people Google procrastination figure? So even I've started to use AI for that kind of thing as well. So there we go. Cool. We got about 22 people still hanging around in the chat. Maybe they're hanging around for the QR code, in which case I'll put that back on the screen. Gabriel, I never struggled with procrastination until I took on a management role. That's interesting. Previously, I was pretty good. Yeah, so there's some really interesting stuff around there about maybe it's the added workload of being responsible for sequencing and supervising other people's work and
Mhm.
activities as well as your own, as that kind of crushed down the space of getting your own stuff done. I don't know whether you want to come in on voice, Gabriel. It's not necessary, but if you did, I've given you the ability to unmute. Meanwhile, I'll answer Camilla's question. DUST stands for difficult. So DUST was difficult, uncertain. What's the S? Tedious, scary. Yeah, there you go.
Scary,
Scary
scary.
and tedious. You can see why I immediately forget the scary one as well. Yeah, and I think that's a really good thing about Gabriel, about the idea that it can ebb and flow at different times for different people. again, I know that, you know, I've been dealing with a chronic illness, chronic pain condition for the last couple of the last year or so, and it's really affected my mood and my momentum. And I have noticed, and I have to tell you, people in my household have noticed that I have been slipping back into some procrastination stuff, maybe to the extent that it wasn't there before. Jack, how do you let go of perfectionism? How to just get it done? Yes, I feel for you, Jack. I am that person too. The idea of Gabriel says I'm not on mute anymore. No, Gabriel, it's just if you wished to talk, you now have the power to, but I can mute you if you wish to again, or you should be able to self mute at the other end.
Um, Hello, everyone.
Hey.
Hey.
Yeah, so going back to what I was saying, it's like this chain mechanism. I took on a management role, didn't have this problem before. I used to get on top of things, get them done, and I used to get this warm, fuzzy feeling inside once everything's done.
Yeah.
Now I'm responsible for a team of 12 people. And for some odd reason, in my head, something switched, and I became this perfectionist person that was never before. And I think a lot of it is to do with the fact that I'm looking at my team and I'm in my head, I have to deliver the absolute best of not the gold standard, the platinum standard.
Oh, wow.
Because otherwise, they'll just say, oh, yeah, but this is not good enough. You're our boss. You need to lead by example. And what ends up happening is I don't even get to silver standard, and my brain just goes, go and tidy up the house because it's a lot easier. You're good at that.
Yeah.
And then it starts
Fill the
affecting my
dishwasher. Yeah.
exactly fill the dishwasher, walk the dog, and so on. And
Yeah.
then it's just like a rolling thing that like a snowball becomes bigger and bigger because you put it back and then you don't want to do it. And then when you deliver it, if someone looks a bit funny at what you're delivering, in my head is just this whole scenario of, oh yeah, they're probably saying this is an absolute pile of rubbish. My confidence levels go through the floor, and before you know it, nobody wants to sit in an office with me because I suck the oxygen out of it.
Oh gosh. I'm hoping nobody's actually said that to you. I think the thing I would first of all, thank you for sharing that. I think those of you who are still on the call and pretty much everyone else who is here today will go, I feel that too. I have those thoughts too. I have those thoughts. And I think one of the reasons why we decided to do a session on this particularly, and Jack, I'll answer your point about perfectionism at the same time, is that often we go into organizations and we do a bit of training, and whether it's looking at email training or meetings training or something around well-being at work, one of the very first things that happens early on in the workshop is everyone has that moment where we go, oh, I thought it was just me. And now we've started talking about it. It's like, this is everyone, right? So every supervisor, every middle manager, every leadership and stuff like that, when you actually create a space where they can feel okay to share some of this stuff, everyone says, I have these thoughts of self-doubt. I worry about what other people will think of me. It came out a lot during hybrid, which is, I've got to be on Teams all the time because people will think I'm not working, or like, are my people working? There was all that doubt and lack of trust that came in. And the perfectionism thing, sometimes you procrastinate because you just go, oh, it's not going to be perfect, so I just won't start it. So it's moving that shift to having done some part of it is better than not having done any of it. And finished, but like 85% of perfect is better than I've only done 40% of it brilliantly. So it's kind of moving that vision. It's not easy to do. It's moving that vision around, progress and some level of output that's actually delivered is better than 99.999% perfect. That can be a lot of the thing that's going on in people's heads. And then that thing around, I have to be like platinum standard or whatever, that is again built into a lot of our work. So if this is one of the earlier free sessions that been on, Gabriel, go head to the YouTube and look for the playlist of other ninja skills sessions. We have this whole no gurus, no superheroes, keep it real, keep it human kind of thing, and allowing people the permission to say, that does not have to be the way we punish ourselves or the way we crush ourselves in the world of work, because we're all just human and we're all just trying our best, and we all want to knock off and do other things. that is the kind of overall underlying kind of human premise of what we're trying to share at Think Productive. So if you haven't had the book, even in the opening chapter of the book, it lays out that kind of mindset as well. And then I think a lot of our work is to bring that whole mindset to whole organizations as well, so that we can start to unpick some of that stuff that people find themselves thinking, and then how that kind of then instantiates itself in their behavior or their thoughts around what other people might be thinking of them. Jack gave us a thumbs up and an applause for the just doing some of it is better than perfectionism. So I'm hoping that's helpful, Gabriel. But if anyone else has got other stuff, yeah, feel free to mention us to your employer, Gabriel. And we have a lot of free stuff that's available. So even if you're not in a position where your organization can book training, although of course we'd love to have that conversation, head to our website, and there's a little menu down the right side, which is kind of work with us for free. And it'll give you access to our blog, our newsletters, Graham Morcott's new
channel.
AI version, our YouTube version, our free sessions, and stuff like that as well. So yeah, it's good ways of sharing some of that stuff around as well. We've still got a dozen or so people here. I suspect some people might just be hanging around to see whether or not they're going to miss something. so if you're just hanging around to see if anybody else is sharing, like Francis and I probably will want to wrap it up in a minute or so. So if you do have another question, drop it in the chat or raise your hand. And if not,
we had a question.
Stuff. Yeah, what did I miss, Francis?
Yeah, we had a question from Christopher. Ooh, my light just went out. But Christopher was asking, thinking second brain, do you have a preferred software or app?
Yeah, thank you for that. So Second Brains is just the tool that you pick for getting some of that stuff out of your head and into something that will hold it, but also allow you to sift it, manipulate it, sort it. It can be a physical, practical system. So it can be, you know, those fans of moleskins or bullet journals or mind mapping or sticky post-it notes actually physically up on your wall in your workspace or a whiteboard. So the first thing I wanted to say, it doesn't have to be an app or software, right? Because some people go, oh, I don't like working electronically. However, there's a lot of cool stuff out there at the moment in the app and software space. So we're very much app agnostic. We're not on kind of any kickback, but things like obviously Microsoft To Do or Microsoft Planner might be there right inside your workspace and obviously integrate really, really well with your Outlook, calendar and email, or your OneNote even. Outside of the Microsoft ecosystem, you might have things like Trello or Todoist or Asana. Some people are using Miro to create a second brain in a whiteboard. Any of those apps
Excel
that are kind of lips to lips. Yeah, Excel or a Word document or something else like that as well. What I tend to find when picking one, Christopher, is it's not necessarily about the feature set, because they often have roughly the same feature set. It can be as simple as what the look and feel of the interface is like, right? So watch some demo videos on YouTube, go to the websites of some of the individual softwares, and just, does it look like a tool you will enjoy using and interacting with? Because the thing that's important about implementing a second brain is not like what you pick to build it in. It's the fact that you commit to it and you stick to it over an extended period of time. So what it looks like is actually probably more important than some people might think. So for instance, some people really like the fact that Microsoft To Do is kind of really integrated within the rest of Microsoft, but it just doesn't look fun. So I've known people go and put their second brain in something like Trello, which you can color code and put stickies on and icons and make it kind of really fun and stuff like that as well. Again, head to the website, look at some of our other webinars. We got some advice on second brains. And again, if you're interested in that kind of side of our work, then do get in touch as well, and we can help with that kind of thing. Vicky said Vicky was hanging around in case something was going to get missed. So if a question doesn't come in the next 20 seconds, I think Francis and I agreed that we would call this at 3 at a maximum. So thank you to everyone who hung around for the extra. And if Klein chooses to leave this part of stuff on the YouTube as well, thank you to YouTube people that watched all the way to the actual end. And head to the website, and we do these every month on different topics, similar kind of duration, 45 minutes of planned stuff, usually two-hander, 2 people from our team. And then we often hang around for a little bit of an after show like this as well. So thank you so much. The 9 of you who are still here, I'm actually going to shut you off now as well. So brilliant. Thank you for joining us. And maybe we'll see you on a similar session soon. Bye all.
Bye.